What is up, everybody? Welcome to the YouTuber Hamfest. Thanks for sticking along with us through this fun week, or fun day of the week. I've got a really cool interview with SteppIR and Hobby PCB, which we're gonna dive right into. We're not even waiting. So let me just first say big thank you to Bob for handing it over. He did a great interview. I really like the MFJ stuff, really interesting things coming out of them. But yeah, without further ado, we're going to dive right in because we got a lot to talk about. So want to say a big thank you to Jeff Wellert and Roee Schwartz for joining us from SteppIR. Now, that's going to be the big question of the day. Is it SteppIR or is it SteppIR?
That's a big confusion. And, you know, even at the office, we confuse ourselves because we call our antennas the BigIR, yet we call ourselves SteppIR. So, you know, who knows really, but...
So no offense go either way then, right? No offense taken if we...
It can go either way, but, you know, at the office, we call ourselves SteppIR, and our antennas, we have the IR for the cutesiness.
Okay, cool. So it goes very good. Well, today we're gonna talk about a couple of things and wrap it up with some of the fun stuff you guys are working on. But why don't you kind of take a couple minutes and give us the background on what makes SteppIR unique, kind of in the marketplace?
Yeah, well, SteppIR was founded by three guys that just wanted to have fun with ham radio and do some contesting. And they came up with this idea of a mechanically adjustable antenna. So then that way you can create the most optimized antennas for any frequency within the physical limitations of the antenna.
Mm-hmm. So it's adjustable. Sorry, go ahead, Roee.
Yeah, so essentially, like if you had, an aluminum antenna of some kind, I mean, in order to make it resonant, you either have to put a tuner on it or change its physical length. So really, Mike and Jim and everybody originally, and John thought, hey, why don't we make something that is actually going to be the correct, mechanical length to actually be resonant? And that's kind of where the idea took off from, and kind of where it's brought us today.
Now, when you adjust those elements, which, by the way, we're going to do a demo here in a second, so hang on for that, guys. You're kind of maintaining your bandwidth space too, right? So it's still, wide bandwidth antenna, and it's matched perfectly for whatever frequency you're on at the moment, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, when you look at it, the SteppIR is really kind of like it's a monobander, really, that's just continuously adjusting. So when you create a specific an antenna where we're not loading the antenna, we're not putting any traps in the antenna does have a pretty narrow bandwidth at a certain frequency, but because we're continuously adjusting, it essentially has infinite bandwidth, right?
Got it.
So we're able to cover, most of our antennas cover from 6.8 to 54 megahertz, and they cover that entire frequency range because we're continuously changing the length of the antenna. Even though, like, if you parked the antenna at one frequency, the bandwidth is pretty minimal. But we're going to continuously change that dynamic by changing the antenna itself. So
Gotcha.
It's something that you don't have to really worry about with our systems. But we can kind of show off one of those EHUs and go about what goes into SteppIR.
Yeah, I think I've got a slide here. So obviously with that kind of magic, you've got to have some cool technology to make that all work, right? And I think that's what you called your EHU, which I've got here, right?
Yeah. We, the guts of the system is in the EHU, which is what we call the element housing unit. And I'll let Roee chat about that since I kind of took over on the...
Yeah, not a problem. So with the EHU, I believe you guys are looking at a picture of what's inside, but this is what it looks like on the outside. So over here is where the SteppIR motor is, which is what essentially your controller is driving, and this turns a cogged wheel, which is going to push that copper beryllium tape. You see that little spool over there is holding all of this copper beryllium tape, which is what your element effectively is. Mm-hmm. And the SteppIR motor turning, and it's very sensitive as far as how many degrees of rotation you can control. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of it, is we can change exactly how much of that copper tape has gone up through this tube and make it exactly the length that you need it to be. And it's continuously dynamic, and it's a really, really clever system, and we've spent a lot of years making it really robust, reliable, and really effective as a performer.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at, we've got the image up for the EHU, and you mentioned the spool kind of in the middle and the stepper motor, and there's obviously some other things that go into that. You said the copper strip that is it can be both the radiating element, the reflector, and the other parts of the antenna as well, right? That's kind of what makes it so, right. Is there anything else important in the EHU unit?
I mean, yeah, the biggest thing is, like Roy said, we're using a stepper motor, which is very precise because you can tell it. I think our motors are rated to 1/8 of a degree of turn. So you can control the stepper motor very finely by just sending it pulses, right? Telling it how many pulses to extend or retract. And so, it really, the magic lies within the stepper motor. And then everything around that, right, is built to allow for a system that can continuously, for 10 or 15, 20 years, continuously be able to extend and retract. And,
that's a fantastic question. So I didn't even think about asking that. What is the rated life for the unit? Is it, you said many years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it varies, right, because different locations and different time periods, but the stuff that we're putting out today, we bench test to what would equivalently be, I think, roughly 10 years worth of heavy usage. So it's when we do our bench testing, we rate it for heavy usage, and we continuously extend and retract this element. I mean, Roey, how long did we have that unit up at the office for running?
I think we had 3 EHUs up in the rafters nonstop for 2 weeks or something like that, of just nonstop in and out, as in like overnights, on the weekends.
24 hours a day for 2 weeks. We had it go out, and I think that did half of the total test. So we took it down at that point, looked in there, did some tests, put it back up. Let it run for another 2 weeks, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that ended up being, it was, I think, roughly 10 years worth of heavy usage, and that was actually on, funny enough, a new part of SteppIR's technology that we were testing. So we'll talk about that later.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, I would say they can be rated. They can last up 10 years plus. I mean, we have have regular customers. I mean, our previous tech support guy in Florida, Julio W4HY, he has had his stepper up for 15 years now. It was 14 years until he did his first maintenance on the antenna. And that's over in Florida, where they get a lot of thunder, they get a lot of weather, right? Crazy weather down there.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's designed for a long life. It's designed for a long life. You don't need to put in a lot of maintenance. So that's kind of an investment in your ham radio future, if you will. Right?
Exactly.
Well, you've got the BigIR behind you, or that's an example of the EHU. I mean, you've got it connected to, I believe that's the control box. How does it all work?
Yeah. So basically, we got a controllers. We have 2 different types of controllers at SteppIR, the SDA100 and Optimizer. But these are electronic controllers that are telling the stepper motors what to do. Mm-hmm. And so actually, I'll go ahead and extend out the copper. It's going to be a little noisy. These things do make quite a bit of noise since it's a mechanical device and we're running a stepper motor. And it's, it's on a loose table making vibrations. But we'll go ahead and extend the copper tape out.
All right.
And it'll be, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do it in a way that we can keep the tape out. So I'm just doing a create and modify where I can manually extend the tape. I'm doing it pretty slowly here, but it'll ramp up.
Okay. Yeah, the first time I stumbled into your booth was actually at Hamvention last year, and you had that really cool display up with your 2 EHUs that put out the spool into the clear tubing. And that was kind of my first aha moment when I saw it. I was like, I get it now. So that's what makes it so unique is these SteppIR design boxes, these EHUs that you use, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where did you see that in and out at? Which show was it?
Hamvention 2019.
Okay, I was out there. So
yeah, I might have even have talked to you briefly. I know I talked to somebody, a couple people actually. So very good, awesome.
Yeah, so Roey, do you want to chat about what makes us special with our copper element?
Yeah, so we make all of these copper strips in-house, and we've been doing it for about 20 years now. Yeah, and essentially it's a strip of copper beryllium tape, very small amount of beryllium, but that gives it better work hardening characteristics and makes it more durable as well, and workable actually. But essentially what we do is we give it a slight bow just so that it can kind of retain its shape a little better and prevent kinking, as well as we punch it in very fine increments to allow it a super reliable gear transmission of extending and retracting.
Yeah, so I wonder if we can get that a little bit closer for the viewers, but
I see it. Yeah, there's a little notches in the middle. Yeah.
There's exactly. There's punched holes, and this is actually on a custom-made tool that we have in-house. So we make all of our own copper beryllium strip.
Okay.
And then, like Roee was saying, it's kind of bent, kind of like a tape measure. So then that way it holds its rigidity, as you can see. I don't know if you can see that, but I can hold it up and hold its rigidity. So, and then at the end we have a little, guide, what we call a molded bullet, which helps guide it through the tube so it doesn't get caught or snagged on anything.
Right, because you've got kind of weather-proofed elements that it needs to slide in and out of, so that bullet's to kind of help guide it through. Okay, that makes sense. Very good. Well, so I get the EHU is kind of like, part of the major thing that makes SteppIR unique, but then this is really adapted kind of to your whole product line, right?
Sorry,
once you No, yeah, go ahead. Let's see it go back in.
Sorry about that, Josh.
No. It's good to demonstrate that too. So when you have the EHU and it's kind of you've got the controller, obviously, that allows you to kind of adapt that technology to almost, basically your whole lineup of antennas, right? You put these in verticals, you put these in the element beams. You sent me that PDF. Do you want me to flip over to that and you can kind of walk through it?
Good idea.
Totally,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
So just as you were saying, the same stepper motor technology can be applied to, anything from dipoles, verticals, 5-element Yagis, and everything in between.
Right.
We have a really diverse lineup. Are you looking at the antenna line right now?
We are, starting at the top where the verticals are.
Perfect. So right at the top, you can kind of see we have some of our more entry-level products. We have the QROh, which you've shown on your channel. We've also have the Urban Beam, which is a really popular one, the small and BigIR. We're looking at the BigIR right over here, actually, which is one of our more serious verticals, rather. And as you've seen, even the QROh, it uses the same fundamental principle, of an adjustable antenna, a mechanically adjustable antenna. Except with the QROh, you're doing it manually, cranking.
Right.
But if you wanted to get into something where you could, sit inside of your shack and, you're playing with your radio and you want to, tune your vertical remotely, this controller, this can control any of our antennas, from 1-stepper motor up to 5-stepper motors, and you can really go from a basic, but super effective system to, really as far as your imagination and ham radio addiction can take you.
Do you with the controller box, going back to that, so let's say I have a 7300 at home, I'm connected to that controller box. Does it, if I just tune to a frequency, if I let it sit for a second and not scroll, does it then pick up and adjust the antenna automatically, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we do have a automatic tuning function for our controllers. For the basic, the SDA 100 controller, it's an option you can get. It's called the transceiver interface, and we use a daughter board that will track the frequency from your radio. So super easy. You run one cable from the SteppIR controller to your radio. We listen in onto the frequency that the radio's at. All you gotta do is press this auto track button here. The light will light up, and then it will automatically follow the frequency off your radio. So
got it.
Super easy way to do it. There's a lot of guys that are old school and like to just manually press the buttons here.
Sure.
If you get the optimizer, the newer controller, that's included. You already get that functionality of auto track. So it is a core system for us.
So for people watching, you could think of just taking that box and replacing your tuner with it, because that is what gets the antenna in tune versus tricking your radio into just putting out the power into an antenna that may not be particularly resonant on that frequency, right?
Right. And, with antenna tuners, what are they doing with all that energy that isn't getting dissipated through the antenna? It's building up as heat. It's just wasted energy. Right. With our system, we're creating the most optimized antenna for that frequency range, and therefore getting as much of that power out as RF. So
Right on. So we're looking at the verticals. You mentioned the urban beam, which I believe you said it was at 6 meters through 40, or sorry,
Yeah,
20 through 40.
We'll just run through it real quick. The
Okay, yeah.
that you got is an 80 through 2 meter antenna. Super
Right.
easy, portable one. And then the next one up from that is going to be the small IR vertical, which is an 18-foot tall vertical, and it's resonant as a quarter wavelength vertical 20 through 6 meters. And then there's a loading coil. So we do load our antennas occasionally in order to reduce the size. The way we do it is we actually use a stepper motor to load the coil. So we have this coil here. I don't know if you can all see that, but we house a stepper motor in here, which changes the tap on an actual physical coil.
Oh, okay.
So we are changing the effective length of the antenna through a coil via a stepper motor. So kind of integrated technology. And that allows us to, keep the same inductance coil and all that jazz. And then we got the BigIR, which is a 40 through 6 meter resonant, and then got the loading coil. And then the beam, the urban beam, which is probably, kind of like the first starter line Yagi that I would get. Is the urban beam, which is a 40 through 6 meter.
Yeah, not a whole lot required to mount an urban beam. That's why it's a great starting point. It's also the cheapest horizontally polarized antenna we sell that'll get you onto 40 meters.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, it's a 40 through 6 meter continuous coverage, so everything in between, and it's all seamless transitions on 20 up to 6 meters. It's actually a 2-element Yagi, so you actually have some kind of signal rejection and forward gain. And it's really nice. That weighs about 45, 46 pounds, really low wind loading as well. And it's got a really small turning radius compared to, really, it's the smallest turning radius of any 40-meter antenna that we sell. It's a really great starting point. I mean, we've even mounted one of these locally on a chromoly steel mast, attached to a boathouse, so not even a tower.
Oh, cool.
So it's a whole lot of creative ways people do. I mean, I've heard of chimney-mounted solutions, roof mounts, all kinds of stuff.
Right on. So then it looks like it goes up from there into a dipole, and then you have 2-element Yagis, and you keep going with it. I've got another picture to go through here.
We got the whole lineup, right? We got a dipole antenna. We got 2-element Yagi, whether you want 20 through 6 meters or you want the 40-meter rotatable dipole add-on. We have a 3-element Yagi, which we have several different 3-element Yagis, actually. We have the standard 3-element, which is a 3-element 20 through 6, and a rotatable dipole on 40 and 30. We have the DB11, which is a DB series, and those are the Dream Beam series. Those are kind of the high-end stepper antennas. That one is a really potent 20 through 6 meter antenna. The 3-element is super small. It's only... let's see here. Yeah, I think it's 19 feet from tip to tip. So the longest element is only 19 feet long. So we have a very small, compact 3-element. And then we got the DB18 and 18E, which are actual beams on 40 meters. So that's when you actually get a 40-meter beam out of your stepper antenna. They become a 2-element Yagi on 40 meters, 2-element Yagi on 30 meters. The DB18E is a 3-element on 30. But that's when you actually get like really high performing 40-meter antennas with our systems, at least. And then we got the big boys, the 4-element and 5-element.
Yeah, we're looking at those right now, and those look like they are large, right?
Yeah. So if you look at it, the 5-element is a 42-foot boom, and then the longest element is 49 feet. So it's 42
49 feet. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's large. It's very large in charge.
How many pounds?
Yeah, I think it's about 240 pounds. The DB42. But that antenna is a 3-element Yagi, 40 and 30. And then it is a 5-element 20 through 6. And then it also has a rotatable dipole, 80-meter dipole on it.
Oh, wow.
And so we get 80-meter operation on a dipole, and what we're actually doing is we use those end elements as capacity hats because we have those loop elements.
Right.
The loop creates a capacity hat, and it helps us be able to have a really high-performing 80-meter dipole for those big boys.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at that now. Yes, I see the dipole there for the optional 80 meters. Yeah, that is a big boy. But I guess you also have something else that's kind of a big boy. That's kind of your new product we're going to talk about, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You want to talk about the new big item?
Yeah, I'll let Roee introduce it. Yeah, go ahead and take it off.
We got the new commercial Yagi, the HFC 435. This is a 4-element Yagi, and it's built for the most extreme conditions. So this might not necessarily have as good gain or front to rear characteristics as the DB42 that we were talking about earlier, but you know, you're going to be able to equip a 80-meter dipole to it as well, and this is really catered. It was originally designed for the commercial market. HFC stands for high frequency commercial, and it's really made for any type of condition you can imagine. I mean, no matter what you put this through, it's designed to handle over 130 mile an hour winds. And we've done double trussing on the elements as well. The boom also shares the DB42 trussing, the heavier duty style, where it prevents it from both sagging down as well as forwards and backwards. So pretty much everything we can do. We've used a different pole design to make it extremely strong, and it uses straight elements as well.
Oh, right. There's none of the characteristic kind of loop that some of the SteppIR antennas have, right?
Yeah, so the HFC 435, we got away from the loops because it gets slightly better performance. And just we think it's easier for us to create a heavy duty straight element than creating you know, a heavy duty looped element. Something that would be stronger than what we already have as far as loops is kind of hard. It's a little bit harder to do. But if you have any of those photos,
yeah, we do. Let's go into those.
See the double trussing. Well, with this antenna, we really did a lot of stuff, right? We made it significantly more durable, like Roee was saying. The boom itself is rated up to 200 mile per hour winds. That you don't really have to worry about the boom ever having issues. Right. The elements, the long element, I think is rated up to 135 mile per hour winds dry, and then up to 85 mile per hour winds with 3/4 inch radial ice. So that means if the entire antenna was covered up to 3/4 inch radius, right? So it's an inch and a half of extra diameter. We're saying that it can handle 85 mile per hour winds at 100 feet, I believe.
So you're trying to really conquer the North Alaska and Antarctica HF market with this antenna, right? That's the primary goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely could be used for that. You know, we have a few regular consumer steppers that are used in the commercial market, and we have steppers in Antarctica, funny enough. So the standard steppers can handle the Antarctic no problem. Yeah. Funny enough, it's actually like the Colorado area. We have had someone who is very interested in one of these because of their situation and how much snow, just the sheer amount of ice that his antennas get, you know, covered in. So it's a very small market for the consumer side. But
we had a good comment come in from Kyle AA0Z. Tornado came through. House is gone, but I'm still operating. So that might be a new slogan for house is gone, but I'm still operating. That might be a good one.
Pretty accurate. You know, this is one of those antennas where you know, you don't have to worry about the antenna coming down. What you need to worry about is the tower coming down. So
sure. Very good. Well, you know, we're a little bit kind of running out of time because I got to get the next caller on, but I want to let everybody know best way to find you. Obviously, link is in the description for all of your antennas. And just to recap, everybody, I'll actually bring up the PDF. So you do have a full product line of antennas that start from, you know, verticals and then go all the way down. So as your ham radio hobby increases over time, you have an option basically for everybody, and something that I think is effective because you're kind of always exactly sized for the frequency that the person is transmitting on. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, the last thing that we would say is, you know, we know we're come from an antenna company, but we're new hams too. You know, I didn't know about ham radio until I started working at SteppIR. And that's when I got my license and got into it. And you know, one thing that both I think Roee and I learned was, you know, when you're transmitting, when you're operating, we think that the key part of operating it is going to be the antenna side, whether it's a SteppIR antenna or not, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have an antenna that is doing what you're intending to operate on, or isn't capable of doing it well, then you have no signal.
Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, I've seen people spend a whole lot of money on a bunch of fancy equipment at their shack, and it's really nice. It gives you a good user experience, but you can have the most fancy, expensive radios and tuners in the world. If you're using a paperclip to transmit, you're not gonna have a good time.
That is kind of how I feel. Is spend a little bit of more money on your antenna system, make sure that's solid, and then you'll enjoy your time better because that's the actual thing that's putting your signal out there, right?
Exactly.
Well, Jeff and Roee, I super appreciate you coming on, being part of this first edition or first annual YouTubers Hamfest. And again, everybody, check the description if you want to check out more from SteppIR. But again, thank you, Jeff and Roee, for being on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, Josh. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Okay, everybody, I'm going to say goodbye to Jeff and Roee. Again, thank you so much, guys. Take it easy. And I'm going to get ready for the next caller.
Sounds good, man.
All right, see ya.
See you later.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click this little button and play some music. Or maybe not play some music because this is going to get loud for a second because of the Skype. So I'm going to have to mute. Hold on. I guess you can still hear me, though. Hey, is that Jim?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, Jim, let me get your audio sorted. How you doing today?
Test 1 2, test 1 2. Great.
That's you. All right,
that
Jim.
Was fun.
You're joining us from Hobby PCB.
Yes, I am.
All right. I first ran into you guys also Hamvention 2019, and I believe, if I remember correctly, you were in like one of a little corner spot, right? Was that where you guys were at last year? Were you at Hamvention last year?
Yes, we were, and it was in the corner of one of the buildings all the way down the end of the aisle. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember finding you, and I sat there for what felt like a good 30 minutes just going through a lot of the stuff you offer. And so we're going to kind of do the same thing you did for me in 2019, but we're going to talk about your new stuff that you have for 2020. So why don't you walk us through these great slides you sent me?
Okay, well, to start with, if people aren't familiar with Hobby PCB, our premier product is the Hard Rock 50 power amplifier. We've been making that for 6 or 7 years now. It's 5 watts in, 50 watts out, 160 to 10 meters. And it's really been a great product for us. It was based on a homebrew challenge that ARRL did back in, I think, 2012. I entered that design, and we've been making that product. Great little QRP amp, get you on the air with a little bit more power without any problem. The other product that's on that first slide is the RSUV3, which has been reviewed in QST. It's a little 144, 220, 440 little radio board. Mm-hmm. We don't really intend you to buy the board and talk on your local repeater, but if you're doing high altitude ballooning, fox hunting, it's really an experimenter's board to get you on the air and let you do some products.
Since we're on this slide, let me ask you, with the Hard Rock 50, because it is a QRP amplifier, are there any complexities due to the fact that it's a QRP amp and the drive is, you only have like 5 watts drive out of the transmitting radio?
No, most of the devices now have 20 dB gain, so it's really easy to get from 5 watts. 50 watts is no problem, even up to higher powers, except that the FCC doesn't like you to do it.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's pretty easy to do. What we say is it's half of a 100-watt amp. It's half the size, half the weight, half the power, and on the air, it's half an S unit.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. All right. You want me to go to the next slide?
Sure.
All right.
Next slide. And actually, I have to do that too. So one of our other products is an SDR. And it's sort of it's really a hands-on radio. It covers HF, 3 to 30 megahertz continuous on receive. It's made to meet FCC specs, transmitting with 5 watts in any of the ham bands. In 2016, we did a Kickstarter campaign and got enough money to produce 400 units. And for folks who have used little SDRs like RTL dongles and some of the other inexpensive SDRs, one of the problems is you're more battling getting it working and getting it set up than you are actually using it to do anything.
Sure.
And the next slide kind of gives you an idea of the complexity, right? So you've got your SDR, you need a sound card, you need a PC, you need microphones, and all of those things need drivers. And by the time you get it set up to actually operate something, you're completely exhausted. And then someone calls you on Skype or something and it resets everything, or Windows pushes an update and nothing works anymore.
Okay, so I'm looking at this. You've got USB, you got 2 USB plugs for the radio. I'm assuming that's like your cat control and whatever your audio interface is, right? So typical things we deal with when we're working, trying to do digital on like smaller radios, QRP radios.
Right. Well, this is just for voice. If you wanted to do digital, you'd have another layer because you need virtual audio cables and virtual COM ports and things, and it's very difficult to get set up.
Right.
And it was sort of the entry-level things. Yes, you can buy this radio, you can set it up like this, and you can find out what SDR is all about. You use HD SDR, you get waterfall and spectrum displays, and you can use all the modulations and stuff. And you certainly can do it. But a lot of people will get frustrated with it and end up with all the other SDRs in a drawer somewhere. So that, well, that was fun, but I don't want to do it.
Right.
But our user community has really stepped up. And if you go to the next slide, one of the things you can do with it is we've got an image for the Raspberry Pi now. You just plug in an SD card, and all of the stuff is already loaded. Quisk and WSJT. When I was making the slide, I recorded all of the stations I heard on the WSJT-X software in the hour that I was making the slide presentation, and you can see just all the things you can do with that.
And that's the image we're looking at on the slide there. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, on the slide. Yeah, all those stations came in 1 hour. I think I had it set up to scan 80, 40, 30, 20, and 15 meters. Mm-hmm. And it's just a blast for operating digital mode. You can also use that for voice communications as well. But what's neat about that is you can load VNC on the Raspberry Pi and operate it from your cell phone. You can operate it from your computer. You can operate it from anywhere in the world. And again, it's really easy to set up. And the amount of additional investment is a Raspberry Pi and a $20 sound card.
Oh, very good. And that VNC capability, I'm assuming, is coming through the Raspberry Pi. Is that kind of where the... Okay, very good.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah. You do have to turn on the Raspberry Pi and connect it to your Wi-Fi and log into the VNC, but we have step-by-step instructions for that. So it's pretty easy to get set up and running with that. Mm-hmm. And you can run that headless. You don't need a keyboard and a screen or a mouse or anything. Once you get it set up, it sits in the corner of the shack. And I just switch off the antenna when I'm not using it for the whisper modes, and operate another radio or something and have it just sitting there.
Oh, very good.
Now, if you do want to use it, on the next slide, this is exactly the same setup, but I put it in a box with a 7-inch touchscreen. Oh, cool. So you're using the same thing. You've got a portable ham radio that you can take with you that sort of looks like a tablet or a laptop or something. It's a pretty unique operating experience. You can add speakers and a microphone and take it with you. And again, all this information is on our website, how to set this up and get it up and running. The next thing is, again, the same radio, but we've coupled it with something called a Pi SDR IQ Plus, which is a product made in Greece and supports several different radios, but the RSHFIQ is one of them. Mm-hmm. And this is another one where it's zero setup. There's no drivers or anything. You plug the 2 units together, hook up an Ethernet cable, and you're on with Power SDR. So it's like a very inexpensive way to get the operating experience of a very high-end SDR. And the A to D converters are way beyond what a sound card has. He's got converters that are full 192 kilohertz bandwidth with 120 dB of dynamic range.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's a really impressive setup. This is actually my station. I really like the Power SDR interface. All the controls are right there, very easy to use.
And that's what we're looking at there. That the waterfall image is the front end that the user would be using or experiencing.
Yes.
Is that software that's run natively in the Pi SDR IQ? Is that how that works?
No, it's actually that runs on a Windows PC.
Okay.
The Pi SDR IQ has a just an SD card, and you don't even know it's a computer. It boots up and provides all the interfaces, the microphone interface, the speakers. It actually has an input for a CW paddle, so you can send Morse code old school way. And if you do want to run digital modes, it's more like you're using a standard SDR, where you would run the digital modes on the same PC that's running the Power SDR.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
There's lots of information about how to do that.
Okay, very cool.
But if you get into this SDR and decide that you do not like using a computer interface to do it, we even have on the next slide I went too far on my slides.
Okay.
An IQ32 Upgrade, where you take the RF board, add a standalone STM32 board, and it's a conventional radio, touchscreen's got a tuning knob that you can tune with. So the idea of this radio is that, you get your feet wet with it, but you're not stuck. There's lots of different ways you can go as your interests, and there's actually more and more all the time. One of our users was setting up a Wingate email server for HF using it, and has step-by-step instructions for that. So lots of stuff there to do.
So I mean, we've got some it's modularity, right? You've got your kind of base board, and then you can just go in different directions based off of where the hobby's taking you, right?
Right. And sometimes you don't know when you first get an SDR what appeals to you and what you just can't tolerate.
Right. When did this come out, the IQ32? I feel like I saw this. Is this relatively recent or about a year ago?
Yeah, we did have it at Xenia last year.
I think that's where I saw it. Yeah, it looks great. I remember seeing it in person. If this is the same one, which I think it is, that's a pretty cool unit. Very good.
Yeah, it was brand new. We were just starting to ship them, and we still have lots of them. So
just to let you know, Jim, it sounds like we've got a couple of the owners of your products in the chat room too, and it seems like they pretty much really like them. So very good. I'm glad they're watching. So go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So what's new? We don't at Hobby PCB. We try not to duplicate things that are available through. We're not as big as the big three yet, but we're trying to find little niche products.
Right on.
And it seems like every day there's a new QRP transceiver on the market, and some of them are really, really capable transceivers. The Elecraft has some really nice ones. There's a new one coming out from ICOM. And that's fun, but I'm not. I don't have an awful lot of time. Sometimes I want to have some power with my SDR, and there's some 50 watt and 100 watt amplifiers you can get. But if you want to go higher power, the FCC limit of 15 dB makes it really impossible. So, or you have to use 2 amplifiers, which makes it expensive. So what we wanted to do is we looked around and we looked at some amplifier decks that you can buy from places like Communications Concept. They have the EB104, which I think was designed in the 1970s. So we wanted to make a product that actually takes a board like that and makes an amplifier that an amateur radio person can put together and get you directly from QRP all the way to QRO. Without having to have an intermediate amplifier. And also without violating FCC rules.
Sure.
I mean, you're certainly allowed to build anything you want. You can't sell them is the restriction that the FCC has. So we found a company called RF Power Tools that makes an amplifier board based on an application note by Microsemi, who makes the transistors. and it's 5 watts drive, 500 watt output, 160 to 10 meters. It's a neat little board. It's easy to use. It's comes mostly assembled. I think you have to put the transformers together and solder the transistors on. But it's nowhere near being ready to operate with. I mean, it needs low pass filters, it needs protection and things like that.
Right.
So that's where we come up with our amplifier support package.
Okay.
It has 4 additional boards to add to the evaluation board. It has a low pass filter boards with filters for 160 through 10 meters to meet the FCC requirements for harmonics. It's got an SWR bridge. It's got a frequency sensor, so it knows it can automatically select the band. We have a rear panel board that holds fans that are variable speed, so we can cool the amplifier. It supports one of 2 different antennas. You can switch antennas back and forth.
Oh, okay. So 2 antenna ports?
Yep, 2 antenna ports.
Cool.
We have a control board that holds actually an Arduino Mega and a pair of 2.8-inch touch screens, and it has all the interfaces for all the rest of the boards. And then there's a power board that takes the 60 volts that the amplifier runs on and makes a 13.8 volt supply, and also has transceiver interfaces and a USB interface. Also in the amp support package is an aluminum case. The one that's in the picture there is a prototype. The ones that we're having made right now are anodized black.
Cool.
And we'll also include 3 400 watt mean well power supplies that make the 60 volts at 20 amps that it takes to power this thing, and a custom machined heat sink with serrated fins, really high performance heat sink, and a copper heat spreader. So it's going to feel like you're getting just a big Hard Rock 50 kit with step-by-step instructions on how to put it together, and of course, and full support.
I think people are trying to figure out how they can send the money through YouTube to you directly right now. Somebody asked, UK shipping. Are you going to do UK shipping on this?
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
Right on. Let me ask you about the power supplies. What do you feed this with? Is it how many volts do you have to feed this with?
The switching supplies we have in there are continuous from 90 volts to 270 volts.
Oh,
so
okay.
You don't even have to set. It's got a standard IEC plug on the back. Use your local cord for your local AC outlet. It runs just fine off a 110 outlet. I use it all the time. Don't plug it into an outlet strip.
Sure.
You want to plug it right into the wall.
So 110, right? And you said it's basically a little bit bigger than the Hard Rock 50, which I think a lot of people know.
It's a lot bigger.
A lot bigger. Okay. What's the? I can't get a frame from the picture.
It's about 7 inches high, maybe 8 inches wide. It's 14 inches deep. It's pretty deep. Altogether, it weighs about 18 pounds.
18 pounds is not bad. That's not bad.
No, it's not. It's very light for a 500 watt supply.
That's awesome.
And it's a pretty simple equation. You get a Hobby PCB amp support package, an RF Power Tools evaluation board, and what you get is a Hard Rock 500 power amplifier.
Got it.
And you're ready to go. And I've got pictures of what it sort of looks like assembled. And it comes down to 5 watts in gets you 400 to 500 watt out. It's completely self-contained. The power supplies are in there. There's nothing else. Like I said, it's about 8 kilograms or 18 pounds. Mm-hmm. The total cost is going to be about $1,500.
Okay.
It's got dual color LCDs. One of them is pretty much for metering and display, and the other is for the operating controls. It covers 160 to 10 meters, all the bands in between. We've already got it integrated with our transceiver, Elecraft, Yaesu, ELAD, ICOM, and Zygu. The ATU, it was supposed to be coming soon, but we've had some delays due to the health crisis of some of the parts coming in. So I've had a chance to work on the ATU, but more on that later.
Will the kit come with the ATU, or is that an additional?
That's going to be an optional extra. So.
Okay.
It uses the Arduino Mega, so that means that all the stuff is open source. We've got automatic protection for SWR, temperature, voltage, current, and excessive drive.
Okay.
So it's going to be pretty much bulletproof. You're not going to be able to hurt it. It does something pretty unique. It has a 13.8 volt 2 amp output, so it can actually power the QRP transceiver. So you don't need another power supply.
Huh. Okay.
It's got USB controls, so you can use it either remotely or unattended. You plug it into a PC, and we'll have some virtual front panel software for it. And of course, we're going to support it like it's our product. And when the assembly is going to be it's going to be very easy to put together. Most of the stuff you have to do is wind toroids, and we'll see if we can't get the toroid guy to make kits for them. Probably will. And screw the boards in. Virtually any part we could have our manufacturer put on. There's a couple of really big things that we couldn't. It would just be difficult to ship them, but most of it's already built. And the pictures there show you sort of the inside. The top of has the amplifier deck. You can't really see the heat sink. It's underneath the copper heat spreader.
Okay.
But the rear panel board is situated so the fans suck air through it.
Okay.
And at idle, the fans, they make a little noise, but it's not at all objectionable. But if you start pushing the amplifier, they start to really step up to cool it. And in the bottom are the 3 Meanwell power supplies and the power board, and it has a big fan in there just to move some air across the power supplies.
Oh, I see it. Okay, so that bottom picture is devoted for the power supplies and the power controller.
Yeah, and you should be able to do the entire assembly and put the bottom cover on it before you have to turn it on. There's going to be no need to use that thing open to and exposed to 220 volts AC. The wiring harness will be pre-made to you pretty much just plug them in, screw it on, screw the top on, so you don't have to be working with tools around high voltages, because that would be we won't have anybody have any trouble.
Someone's asking in the chat really quick, does it do auto band switch?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Well, it does. It can be dedicated to multiple transceivers that I already mentioned: Elecraft, the 817 from Yaesu, the ELAD transceiver, the new ICOM.
Assuming your radio can interface with the amp, when you change bands on said radio, it will switch for you.
But it also has a frequency detector in it. So if you somehow aren't telling the radio or the amp what band you're on, and you key it on a certain band, it will automatically switch to that band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's a little bit less graceful. And if you're using the antenna tuner, you really would. It's better to integrate it with the transceiver if you can.
Right.
But you don't have to. So what's unique about the Hard Rock 500? It is the only amplifier available in the United States, at least, that takes you from QRP to 500 watts out.
Right. Sure.
Right. And really the only way to get there. It's got the only one I've found that has 2 LCD screens. I suppose I could have used a bigger one, but it's kind of nice because the way it's set up, with the controls on one and the displays on another. And it's designed for sort of the new style of a QRP rig, which is sort of a short, flat little thing. And you can sit in front of it, and the amp acts sort of as an extension of the control panel. You can see with the K3 or KX3 sitting there that the amplifier's right above it, and if you need to use the only controls that you really use on the amp are the antenna tuner.
Yeah.
And again, if you want to travel with this, you don't need a power supply for your rig. You can just use the amplifier. The whole rig, the amplifier, and an antenna will fit in a suitcase that you don't have to pay extra baggage for.
Right, because it's 17 pounds. You got your powers. You could power your QRP radio off of it. I'm just going to ask it because I'm sure you probably we're going to hear it. I assume this will work with the IC705 whenever it shows up in the market.
Well, I've been scouring the internet for information about what comes out of an IC705, and the only manual that's out so far that I've found is in Japanese, so it's not really helping me.
I need to get you in front of Ray Novak, I think. Let's figure this one out. This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it as soon as I'm sure that the ICOM 705 sends out band information, so that means we'll be able to decode it and figure it out. So.
I think though that it uses USB though for everything.
Okay.
So it's all over USB with that radio.
Yeah, but it did have a tuner jack on it, so that was encouraging.
Oh, that might work. Yeah, I think you might be right.
Yeah.
That's
so there might be something there. Yeah. So I'm hopeful, but you can always use the automatic feature of the amp if you know.
Right, because you got the ATU, but you got the ATU option with your amp, so that scratches some itches maybe that people have with the 705. Yeah, very cool.
It'll get it up there. I think it'll be a good combination. I'm looking forward to getting one when they're out.
So thank you for letting me do that divergence there. I appreciate it.
It's nice to build your own amp if you're inclined to do so, because then you sort of know what's in it. You're not intimidated by getting in there and finding out what's going on. And it's a full featured amp at an entry level price. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not the cheapest 500 watt class amp, but it definitely has features of a much more expensive amp.
Yeah, for sure.
So now with I've got the antenna tuner on the next slide. It fits in there over top of the low pass filter board. Mm-hmm. I've been working with it. It matches loads up to about 6-to-1, 4-to-1 on 160 meters. It has memory so that it stores the tune for each band and each antenna. Mm-hmm. So if you want to switch back and forth between two antennas, it knows the tuning hour for the. It usually tunes in about 2 seconds, about 10 milliseconds if it already knows what it is. There's 7 capacitors, so there's 127 capacitance values and 63 inductor values. It automatically knows if it can't tune the antenna because the SWR is too high, and it'll let you know about that because at 500 watts, some really high impedances make some incredible voltages.
Yeah.
And it tunes with the exciter power, which is really nice because you're not sending out a 500 watt tune signal, but you can also use it with the amp in bypass mode and use it to tune for the radio as well. And in like the few minutes we have left, I did want to run over a few of our other products in case folks aren't real familiar with us. We have a little CW keyer, which is it's nice. It's got lots of a PC interface, and you can manage the memories on screen and do text to Morse code and things with it. And it also has an IQ output for SDR transceivers, so that you can use CW with a paddle with zero latency. It's a really nice little keyer. We have our little bandpass filter boards that are used primarily for experimenters. We have one for 2 meters, 220, and 440. They're very low cost, reasonably high performance. We actually sell lots of them. We have trouble keeping them in stock. We've got an Arduino-based WM2 watt meter, which is a complete kit, includes the Arduino and the touchscreen display. It's a sensor-based one, so it covers 1 to 500 megahertz, and it can read anywhere from 1 milliwatt to 2 watts, the watt meter by itself, and we have an attenuator that you can put on the input so you can read up to 200 watts with it. Mm-hmm. And that pretty much rounds us out. The last slide sort of has some contact information. Hobby PCB products can be found at HobbyPCB.com. RF Power Tools is at rfpowertools.com, and anybody can email me. I'm Jim at HobbyPCB.com.
Jim, this is a fantastic lineup. I love the way you put the slides together too. Just as somebody who makes a lot of slides, you started out by covering the SDR, right? And you just went with that whole modular thought process all the way through from a starting SDR all the way up to a 500 watt transmitter, if you think about it. You've got like a transformer of QRP capability, basically taking you all the way to base station operation with the products that you have out. It's really kind of fully fleshed out product line you have. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to start small and add in the pieces that are interesting to you.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Let me ask you, I saw a question in the chat. The tuner option, what's it going to run, would you say, cost-wise?
It's hard to determine right now because I haven't got all the parts, but it should be in the $500 range, maybe $500 or $600. We'll have to see how much it shakes out. Relays can be expensive.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, understood. Well, again, link is in the description, but feel free to take a screenshot if you need to for everybody watching, and I'll Jim, again, you can contact Jim at HobbyPCB.com. Jim, I'm really glad you're able to hop on the show for our first kind of annual YouTuber Hamfest. Is there anything else you want to mention before I do my little wrap-up here and say goodbye to you?
No, go ahead and wrap us up.
All right, Jim, I'll be in contact. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Thank you.
I'll see you. Bye. Oh, it was fantastic. Man, that was really cool. I do want to go back really quick because there was a couple of super chats that came in that things fast and furious. I'd rather keep the momentum of the chat going and then kind of come back to them. James Jacobs sent in one. Appreciate what you do. Great content. You're the reason I got my ticket and working slowly in general. I also just ordered the Anytone 878 Plus, so have a couple of cold ones on me. Thank you. That was from KI5ITJ. And Filomeno Boy sent one in as well. And now I'm trying to go back up. And now what's going on here? Let me see the live chat. Oh, it's not letting me go back up. I'm going to have to do it over here. Of course. Why do you do this to me? I'm going to... Shoot, I guess I can't go back any farther than that for the live chat. Well, sorry about that. Anyway, I've got a couple of minutes here. I'm not able to do my normal Patreon stuff because, again, we flew right through that. But I wanted to say special thank you to the patrons. I really do support, or I appreciate the support. I'm going to be taking the vote for the Patron Picks episode. That's probably going to start tomorrow, and we're going to pick a winner, and that's going to be the first Saturday of June's live stream. So again, thank you for the support over on Patreon. Isaac Cool said, buy yourself a double-double sometime. I love double-doubles. That's very good. So what we're going to do right now, I'm wrapping up my stream. We're all going to go over to Ham Radio 2.0 stream. If you have not already, please go to youtubershamfest.com because we're going to be doing our happy hour. Think of this like if we were all at Hamvention on the Saturday night after everything shut down. Where are we going to go? We were going to have a YouTubers meetup. So why don't you join us over on his channel? We're going to be hoisting some beers with all the awesome streamers that really put out a massive effort. I was watching for most of the day and really impressed by everybody. Did a phenomenal job. And we're going to be back again tomorrow, starting bright and early again. We're pretty much bright and early. I'll be live streaming with Yesu and Ham Radio Outlet. We're going to be doing another interview with them. And then I get to wrap up the whole show at the end of the whole thing. It's going to be Sunday about, I think, 11 a.m. my time. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This has been a blast. So please hop on over to Ham Radio 2.0's channel for our happy hour, because that's where I'm going to be going. And another big shout out, I don't know if anybody said it, I'm sure he might have, but they made shirts for us. We got shirts, the YouTubers Bunch shirts, highly limited edition, coveted shirts here that Jason put out and made available. So I think that was Jason. I hope it was. We'll sort that out in the happy hour. Someone will correct me. Guys, I super appreciate you watching. We went over 600 people at kind of its peak. Thank you again to SteppIR, Jeff and Roee and Jim from Hobby PCB. That was fantastic. I likely have an antenna project in my future. Don't tell my wife. She might still be in the chat. Anyway, guys, I'm Josh, KI6NAZ. I hope you join me over on the Ham Radio 2.0's channel. Until then, I'll talk to you soon. See ya.